Is the URC about to be turned on its head? My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. Round 2 of the URC, and the URC year on year never ceases to surprise me. As I said in the intro, it's possible that some of the convention of the URC could be about to be turned on their heads this weekend. We'll address that a little bit later, but let's go down through the matchups for this week. So start off tonight, we have some really good matchups here. Actually, got the Stormers at home to the Ospreys. That's a 6 o'clock kickoff if you're watching in Ireland or the UK. It's at the DHL Stadium, and you're talking about Stormers started out 35-0 trashing of Leinster, and then Ospreys, they go to the Bulls to score 40 points, so they get the try bonus point, but they concede 53. So, defense or attack is basically, it seems to be one or the other for them, at least in their opening round. So, expecting them to put up a better fight than Leinster did in that first round. But at the same time, Stormers are looking good. They don't seem to be missing their Springboks, certainly from that first round game, and also coping well with their injuries too. Now, injuries can be more of a long-term thing in terms of when you need to rotate players, but at the moment squad is fresh. They've only played one game, and I think a couple of things. First of all, I think that Ospreys, I can see them actually leading the game at some point tonight. But I think Stormers are going to come through in the end and win the game, and probably another bonus point win for them, and a really good start to the season as well. Probably their best start in a few years as well. Obviously they're starting at home, and that's a good way to build momentum. But they're a team that can show in the past when they go to Europe, they can get results as well. So, expecting Stormers on the back of a victory tonight to be up there, for certainly a good part of the start of the season, and their team with the quality in there as well to keep that going all the way through to the playoffs as well. So, even though it's round 2, I think it's a big game for momentum for the Stormers. Ospreys maybe looking to back up the performance against the Bulls. But will that performance be able to deliver them result? I don't think so. So I'm going to go for the Stormers to win, but Ospreys still to be pretty competitive. Okay, on to the second game then. So Edinburgh versus Ulster. This one is a 7 o'clock kickoff. It's at the Hive. And we have Edinburgh last gasp defeat away to Zebre in their opening game of the season. Ulster, a fairly comfortable win against the Dragons, 42 points to 21 for them. And yeah, looking at this, two teams that a win in this game here really could, define that early period of the season for those teams into, European competition as well. Because you look at Edinburgh, and they've lost their first game home. Pick up a win, you kind of steady the ship a little bit and maybe have something to build on. Ulster, if you start the season with 2 wins, including an away win, suddenly that young group of players get a little bit of belief and maybe go on a bit of a run, a bit of a decent purple patch of form. So I think for both of these teams, it's a very important game in terms of just setting that kind of tempo for that early part of the season for each of them. And looking at, where these teams, finished last year, Ulster fell away towards the end of the season, finished 14th. Edinburgh finishing 7th in the playoffs, and they're two teams that are thereabouts. Ulster were up there challenging at one point as well, around about where Edinburgh were. So a purple patch now could be the basis of a run to actually make the playoffs again this season for Edinburgh, and for Ulster, a run that maybe helps them to kind of re-establish themselves as a force in the URC because they've hugely fallen off in the last few years. I'm absolutely going to be cheering for Ulster, but in terms of who I'm predicting, I'm going to go for an Edinburgh win in this one. Okay, on to the third and the final of the Friday games. It is Dragons versus the Sharks. It's at Rodney Parade, and you got the Dragons lost to Ulster in their opening game, 42-21, so double scores. Finished absolutely rock bottom of the URC last year. 9 points was all they got last year, and they got I think, was it a bonus point win? They beat the Ospreys in the first game, so they got, I think, either like 4 or 5 of those points in the opening game last year. So from round 2 last year on, pretty dismal season for them in the URC. They know that axe is dangling above their heads, even more so now with the words that are coming out of the WRU. So first home game of the season, you expect some kind of reaction from not just the players, the fans, the whole region, to say, listen, we're the Dragons, this is what we're about, and we're worthy of our place, of our existence. And I do really feel like they're fighting for their lives at the moment. And it may be that they could have a really good season, but still the decision will go against them. But hopefully, I absolutely hope they go down swinging if they do. If this is the last season that we see the Dragons. I do not want to see, I've said it many times, I do not want to see, any teams being, thrown out of the URC or going out of existence or anything like that. Like, I just think it's a real tragedy for rugby. Yes, there are financial, realities about it, but, I feel like from my point of view, at least, rugby as a whole needs to take more of a long-term view than we are at the minute. We need to be looking after these clubs, because at the end of the day, the Dragons have, even though they're not getting brilliant gates, they still have fans. And I've said it before, if my team went out of existence, that might be it. Like if Leinster just one day, you never know in the future, right? Sorry, Leinster, you're done. I might even be done with rugby, honestly. It's certainly at a club level. And that's the kind of thing you're playing with, I think, with stuff like that, is you can't just assume that, Dragons fans will automatically just switch to whatever, if they're going down to 2 regions, to switch to another region. So I hope we see some real fight from the Dragons this year. The thing is, that's one of the things they've been absolutely missing is we saw with the Scarlets, Dwayne Peel instilling a bit of dog in him last year, and completely, for me, transformed how the Scarlets actually were, and got them into those playoffs as well. For the Dragons, we don't see any real fight. Once the scoreline starts going against them, you never really see the Dragons coming back over the top of a team. So I want to see some fight. Sharks, Sharks last week, playing against the Glasgow Warriors, fairly competitive. And then that kind of last 10 minutes really blew out the score in favour of Glasgow. They got 2 tries, 2 yellow cards to the Sharks in that period as well. And, it was more up until 70 minutes, basically, like that was the first, or those last 2 tries that Glasgow got, the first of those 2. It was very close. So even everything I've said about the Dragons there, I think the Sharks just will have enough to beat them. And, it feels like maybe the Sharks are again, like last year, taking the URC more seriously than they did the previous season. So, want to see fight from the Dragons, but prediction-wise, I got to go with the Sharks on that one. Okay, into the Saturday games. So the first game up is a lunchtime kickoff, 1:45. It is Connacht versus Scarlets at the Dexcon Stadium. So, and anybody watching in Ireland, it's on TG Car as well. Irish language broadcaster, as well as the normal places you would see the games. So we got, Connacht opening game against Benetton. They win that. Scarlets at home lost to Munster. So looking at it just on paper, you would think, well, Connacht are going to win that because, decent start for them and a second game at home as well. A brilliant chance for them to actually get some consistency into their team and build some momentum. And again, Scarlets, losing at home, and I'm pretty sure, let me just check now. Yeah, only team to lose at home last week as well. It was like 7 of the 8 games won by the home team. So looking at that, you would think, well, it's got to be a Connacht win, right? But then we have the unpredictability of Connacht, the fact that, they seem to find it very hard to string results together. And that's why we're always kind of seeing them missing out on playoffs. And even when, in Europe, when they're in the Challenge Cup, when they look like they're in a strong position, going into knockout stages, that really goes against them. They don't seem to be able to put 2, 3, 4 good performances and getting results, back to back. And that's why I think we never see them really progressing that much in knockout rugby. But absolutely able to give anybody a game on their day as well. Scarlets, last year, as I said, Dwayne Peel, I think, did a great job. Got that fight in the team. They always had the skill and the ability to score worldly tries. That's not gone away. But we have to question now, backing up from last year, can they now start to perform in the URC? Losing their first home game would have, hurt them a little bit. Expect a bit of a, again, you always expect that kind of, where's the bounce back the next week, right? And I think we will see that a little bit. And this game, it's a Connacht game, and Scarlets are up and down as well during games. So probably going to see both teams having purple patches and the lead maybe changing hands a few times as well. And it's hard to really call this one. I never predict a draw. I feel like predicting a draw for this one, but I'm going to just give the edge, just because I'm Irish, to Connacht. For no other reason, I'm going to go for a Connacht win. Okay, next then we have Benetton versus Glasgow. So Benetton went away to Connacht, lost their first game. And, since since they get knocked out of the Champions Cup, right, I feel like they've really fallen off like last year, because they had that, that win against Bath, yes, a weakened Bath team, but they still beat them in the Champions Cup. They lost their opening game in the Champions Cup 28-0 away. But then they beat La Rochelle in their final game to get into the knockout stages. And then really from there, then, their season went downhill. They've always been competitive in this league, and it seemed like they were, making strides season upon season upon season. And I think in Champions Cup last year, they made another stride in beating those big teams. But I felt like in the URC, kind of suffered for that because they went backwards a little bit. Ended up, that last game of the season against Munster, they shoot out, they lost that, missed out on the playoffs. But, they were in a position earlier on in the season that they shouldn't have needed to win the last game of the season to qualify. Their form just kind of deserted them. And this year, going away to Connacht, and, it was, I'm not going to say it was comfortable for Connacht, but you would expect Benetton to be a bit more competitive than they were. And that's something that Benetton had really worked on over the last few seasons prior to really, like even the first half of last season, going on the road, they were able to compete with, some of the best teams in the league as well, and either losing bonus points or winning or wherever. But yeah, it feels like they're down a bit, through the second half of last season, plus, the start of this season as well. Looking at Glasgow, really good win for Glasgow. It did take them a while to kind of pull away from the Sharks. As I said, there was that last kind of 10-minute period that they really, took control of the scoreboard in that game. But they've got that under the belt now, going to the Stadio Monaco in this one. And you feel like, Glasgow going there, it can, we've seen with these two teams as well in the past, it can go either way. Like Benetton, could put up a really good performance in this one and just blow Glasgow away, which they've done previously. But I feel like just on form, I'm going to go for a Glasgow win. I think Glasgow this year now, last year, I think the pressure of being champions and having kind of that target on the back really, didn't do them any favors. Fell away from like second, dueling it out for first in the table, down to fourth, and really didn't have any momentum going into the playoffs last year. I think this year they're going to look for more consistency and being able to compete, especially in the URC. Hopefully they're going to compete in Europe as well. But yeah, I think because of that, we're going to see a Glasgow win in this one. Okay, on to the next one then. It is Vodacom Bulls versus Leinster. This is a 5:30 kickoff. Actually, sorry, Benetton and Glasgow is a 5:30 kickoff as well. So these two games on at the same time. I'm going to be watching. I'm a Leinster fan, so I'm going to be watching this one. Even though I think in terms of just how competitive the game will be, I think Benetton Glasgow is probably the better game to watch if you're neutral, because I feel like this game is going to be a bit one-sided. But Bulls versus Leinster, 5:30 kickoff. It's at Loftus Versfeld, and I feel like with this one that Leinster last week absolutely tanked by the Stormers. This week we will see a bit of a bit of a reaction from them to that. The coaches will demand that, and we will see a bit of a reaction from them. But I still feel that the Bulls at Loftus against a Leinster team that is shorn of all of their lines players, even though you look down through, we did it in the review last week, look down through the Leinster team that played. On paper, they look decent, but the problem is going down to Loftus and getting a result. You have to be more than decent. You've got to be an exceptional team, or a team that can produce exceptional performances. And yeah, this Leinster team could produce exceptional performances, but for the most part, they haven't needed to, because a lot of time this Leinster team that we're seeing play this game, they're playing, in the RDS, and it's the kind of Leinster team that you would pick. Maybe, let's say, Dragons not in great form, bottom of the league, middle of the season. You put out a team like this, and you might struggle to break them down to start with, and then eventually the points rack up. That's the kind of team I think this Leinster team is at the minute. They have issues at 10, and not just Prendergast, but talked about in the comments with people as well. You got Prendergast is an issue. You have Harry Byrne, who is he's made of glass. It's the problem with him, right? You can't get he was definitely a talent when he was coming through earlier in his career, but the problem is that he got injured so often that he never got a run of games in the team to actually build that experience. So even though he's an older player, he doesn't have as much experience as he should do, really, in terms of being the leader of the team. And then you have Frawley, who hasn't been in great form either. And, those are your options at 10 at the minute. And I think if Leinster had, a decent option at 10 other than those, we would see that person being picked at 10 and maybe Prendergast being taken out of the spotlight, but that's not happening at the minute. And then you look at the Bulls as an organization, absolutely love them because they're one of those teams that you can just slot players in. Springbok is injured or off. Springbok's obviously playing, in the Rugby Championship at the moment as well. Not available. Slot a guy in. He'll do a brilliant job for you, especially at home. And that's the big thing, is they're home, they're at Loftus. Yes, Leinster, showed last year that they had a bit of fight about them. But I feel like the Leinster team that went last year, even though the names are maybe like bigger names that are there this year, I feel like the Leinster team of last year was probably the best team that Leinster have sent on their South African tour to date, at least. Like, this team again on paper looks better, but I feel like as a team, last year's team was probably just a little notch above, and that's why they were so competitive, I think, last year. But I do expect Leinster to certainly be more competitive this week than they were last week, but I don't think that it's going to change the result. I think it's going to be a Bulls win. I think Leinster might actually pick up a bonus point, and I'm thinking in terms of try bonus point rather than a losing bonus point. They might actually get 2 bonus points, but I think it's more likely they'll get a try bonus point rather than a losing bonus point out of this. But I'm going to go for a Bulls win. And as a Leinster fan, it hurts me to, 2 weeks in a row to be backing against my team, but I can't, obviously Leinster can win the game. Those players can produce a performance to win against the Bulls, but you got to look at the balance of probability, and the balance of probability says that the Bulls are probably going to win that, so going to back the Bulls. Okay, on to the last of the Saturday games then. So it's Munster versus Cardiff. This is 7:45 kickoff, and it's Thomond Park. So Munster's first home game of the season. This is on TG Car as well for anyone watching in Ireland. And it's a pretty tasty game, because you got two teams who have won their opening games. Munster away to the Scarlets, Cardiff are home to the Lions, and two teams who were kind of on a similar level in the URC last year as well. Cardiff got a better start than Munster. Munster obviously had a better finish, making the playoffs. But again, it's similar to, I think, the game between Ulster and Edinburgh, where you have two teams who are kind of battling for momentum. And this is another one like that, where both teams have won the first games, and a second win on the bounce would be, again, just that real kickstart to the season, because, winning one game is great, but if you win a couple, that's when the confidence grows. And because of that confidence, then you have the chance to, I'm getting distracted now, because I'm just seeing that Edinburgh versus Ulster has been postponed. It's literally just come up on the official site here. So that game is postponed. So I guess they're not going to be getting, either of those are going to be getting momentum now. So I'd imagine it's something to do with the weather, because we've got a bit of a storm going on here in Ireland, and maybe in Scotland it's a bit worse. But yeah, that game seems to be off. But back to Munster Cardiff. So yeah, I think Munster get 2 wins in a row, or Cardiff, and that that momentum and the confidence that gives the players means that when they go into a game and they're not playing as well, they're able to stick in the game. And then if a bounce ball goes their way, they get a win maybe then that they shouldn't have. And I think that's real thing that confidence does for a team, is that you pick up extra points maybe that you shouldn't have, in terms of how the other team are playing and how you're playing, but you're able to pull that out. But, Cardiff, I think going to Thomond Park and getting a win there would be absolutely massive for them as well. And it'd be one of those things, that would really, again, Cardiff, they're kind of, they've got a core of young players there. And if they can get that confidence in them of being able to go to Thomond Park and get a win, and they've got 2 wins on the bounce, they could go on from there, because, last year they had a really good start to the season and fell away. And it's about, again, being able to carry that through the rest of the season, whether they can do that or not. Obviously, early on, though, if they can get another good start to the season, it kind of gives them another chance in terms of, last season you had that good start and kind of threw it away in the towards the end of the season. Here's a second chance at it. Can you do better? Like, learn from your mistakes kind of thing and move on from there. For Munster, feels like Munster have been, even though they've obviously won the URC 3 seasons ago, that there's been in a lot of flux with them, where, obviously, win the URC, coach then is gone, within a couple of months of the start of the next season. And, it really does feel like Munster need to just get a solid base under them again and start building again, because Munster would feel like their place is, not battling out to just about make it into the playoffs. They will feel that, they should be up there with the likes of Leinster, Bulls, Stormers, Glasgow, like at the pointy end of the table, battling out for top 5, top 4 places, and also competing in Europe, which they really haven't done, in recent seasons. So, again, a big game, I think, for Munster, just in terms of being able to, produce results against a team like Cardiff, because, again, I think their sights will be set higher, but it's great setting your sights high, but you've got to deliver, and they haven't delivered recently. And that's why I think Cardiff will look at it and think, this Munster team, they're not as good as Munster teams of the past. We've got a shot in this game. And I think that's a lot, that Munster are kind of finding in recent seasons. There's a lot of teams going to Thomond Park feeling like they have a chance to win the game. Whereas you look at the contrast with Leinster, a lot of teams give up before they go to the RDS. They send over weakened sides because they think, well, we're not going to win that game, so let's rest players for the next game, which we feel is more important because we have a chance to win it. Munster don't hold that fear for teams, the way they would have done in the past. Now, Munster would have been in the position that Leinster are in now, but it feels like they've got a long road to get there, but maybe this is the start of it. I'm going to predict a Munster win in that one. Okay, on to then the final game of the weekend. So we got Zebre versus the Lions, and this is where I talked about the whole URC being turned on its head, because Zebre at home, they've won their first game against the Lions, who haven't travelled very well, who haven't, like, the Lions really, a lot of their season seems to be based on performances at home. They still haven't cracked that ability that you see from the Bulls and the Stormers, and now and again the Sharks. The Sharks are certainly not as consistent on the road, but Bulls and Stormers are able to go to Europe and able to perform and get results, and that's why you see them for the most part up near the pointy end of the table. Sharks were able to do that last year, but that was really the first year we saw them doing it, and Stormers weren't able to do it last year, and that's why they kind of felt were a bit further down the table than we normally see them. Lions, though, good start last year, built on performances at home. First game of the season this year, they went away to Cardiff. They lost 33 points to 20, even though Cardiff had a man sent off. So, a lot looking good for them. But you go to Zebre, and this is a 3:00 kickoff on Sunday. It's at the Stadio Sergio Lanfranchi. In past years, you would have thought, okay, we're going to Zebre, almost expecting to win, right? Nobody goes to Zebre anymore expecting to win. If you do, you're in for probably a shock. So that kind of thing is gone now. But the Lions will feel like, well, we can go there and we can be competitive. And if we do things right, we may come away with a victory. They're not going there thinking we're definitely going to lose, certainly. But again, you don't have that thing of a few seasons ago of, oh, we're going to Zebre, that's going to be a win. We might even change a bunch of our players and still win the game. So Zebre have built that, fearsome reputation, especially at home, over the last few seasons. And I really do feel like they're going to win this one. And if they win this one, coming back to turning things on its head, it means Zebre are going to be up near the top of the table, when we look at our first table, probably on Sunday or Monday. And Leinster are going to be towards the bottom of my predictions, at least if my predictions come true, right? You're going to have Leinster with 2 defeats from 2 games and Zebre with 2 wins from 2 games. And, go back 3-4 years ago, and who would have predicted that after 2 rounds of the URC that would even be the remotest of possibilities. I don't think anyone would have thought that could happen. But potentially we could see it this weekend. And even though I'm a Leinster fan, I think that would be it'd be brilliant to see. Obviously not brilliant again as just a personal fan of Leinster, but just seeing that a team in Zebre's position being able to get themselves and turn everything around there and just year on year build. And they're showing the way for teams like the Dragons that, you don't have to start from a base of having a ton of, international quality players and a massive academy that just churns out player after player after player. You can start from a very low base and just incrementally improve. And as long as you're improving just that little bit more than the teams, closest to you in the league, you're going to start climbing. And that's what they've done. And, for this one, I think, again, it's going to be kind of a close one. Maybe not as close as the Zebre Edinburgh game, but, the Lions are, they're a team that always have a few scores in them. It's rare, really, that you see the Lions getting absolutely destroyed. But as well, they kind of struggle with those kind of tight games as well. They kind of lose momentum at the wrong time, that kind of thing, and let, I think for them, it's a concentration thing that they don't seem to be able to, they score and then they might concede almost immediately. You can see that happening in this game where maybe it's going to be tit for tat for a bit and the line's not being switched on is going to be enough, I think, for Zebre to take the victory. So I'm going to predict Zebre in that one. And then we go through just quick recap of my predictions. So going to go for the Stormers to beat Ospreys, the Sharks to win away to the Dragons, Connacht to beat Scarlets, Glasgow to win away to Benetton, the Bulls to beat Leinster, in the end I think comfortably, Munster to beat Cardiff, and Zebre to beat the Lions, and then Edinburgh, Ulster. I was in that one, the prediction doesn't matter anymore. So we'll see when that is rescheduled. But let me just check here why it is called off. Due to worsening weather conditions across Scotland overnight from Storm Amy, the fixture, which was due to take place this evening, Friday, October the 3rd, in Edinburgh, will now be postponed to a later date. Yeah. So, these two teams going to have a bit of maybe fixture congestion later on in the season because of this postponement, but it was weather. Okay, so those are my predictions for the second round. Let me know what you think down in the comments.